Welcome to the Grace Story Podcast, where inspiring stories are brought to life. This podcast is made possible by Grace College and Seminary, located on the shores of Winona Lake in the great state of Indiana. I'm your host, Dr. Drew Flam. This is the Grace Story Podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Dr. Wally Brath, Assistant Professor of Worship Arts here at Grace College. Dr. Brath attended the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music. He received his MA in ethnomusicology, which sounds very interesting, from Liberty University, and in 2018 achieved his doctorate in worship studies. Dr. Brath has traveled internationally as a worship leader, musician, and educator, and he enjoys both traditional and contemporary worship music, arranging for multicultural congregations, songwriting, and utilizing music technology. In fact, we're in one of his studios right now. He leads the Worship Arts program here at Grace and is also director of the Festival of Music each year here in Winona Lake, Indiana. Dr. Brath's wife, Shayna, is also a musician playing what I think is the best instrument ever, the violin, and all of his kids are fantastic musicians as well. He might be most well known, however, for being the creator of the soundtrack for the Grace Story podcast, right? Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Brath.
Thank you.
Are those royalties still coming in from the music you've done for the Grace Story podcast?
Absolutely. All 50 cents.
Wow, you've gotten paid way more than I have so far for this podcast. Man, I need to ask the producers here for a raise, I guess. Thanks for being able to come just share a little bit about your story and about the Worship Arts program. I'm excited. We even got a little piano here, so we'll see if we can get some music going and share a little bit there as well. But let's go back to your childhood, and I'd like to just know how did you get engaged in music? How did that start for you?
Yeah, it started in the church. So I was raised in the church, and the Lord got a hold of me at a really young age, and I think my parents sort of tell the story that when I was like 3-4 years old, I would stay after church when people were talking. I would just jump on the piano and start trying to play things, and then I just started piano lessons when I was like 5 years old, and I had a teacher that encouraged me to kind of keep exploring, not only learning written music, but also kind of playing music by ear. So her husband was a saxophone player and teacher at Valpo, at the University of Valparaiso. Her name was Mary Kay Barco. And so I would come into my lesson and I'd say, hey, I've been kind of experimenting with this and trying to figure out this kind of music, and she would encourage me in that, and she'd say, I still want you to work on your lesson, but still, you can, please, keep developing your ear and keep listening to these different kinds of music. So that's it just, I was fortunate enough to be in churches where they really encouraged me to play and lead, and so even at a young age, I would be leading like a music team at the church and that kind of thing.
That explains sort of the breadth of music that you enjoy engaging. Was there a vein or a program that, like, I did violin and it was like Suzuki, right? It was the Suzuki program. Did you have a program that you utilized, or was she kind of coming up with her own thing?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't Suzuki. We would do like the hand exercises. I mean, that's big for piano to develop technique, and the Sham, I think it's the SCHAUM, like the Sham books were, and then the Faber kind of piano books. So it's kind of those standard piano things that everybody uses. But so.
And then you determined to go to a conservatory, Cincinnati Conservatory of Music.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that decision. I mean, that's a big decision, right? Like that, you're kind of throwing your lot in to say, like, I'm doing the musician thing.
Yeah, it was a big decision. I was so in high school, I also played basketball and really enjoyed it. I still enjoy the game, not playing as much.
If you can't tell on video, he's a diminutive 6'7".
Yeah, 6'6". Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and And my son, my oldest son, who's a senior at Warsaw High, is 6'11". So so he's far surpassed me in height and skill at basketball. But I enjoyed playing, but I got to like my sophomore year, and I knew the Lord was calling me into music and probably into like a music ministry type of role, and wanted to be trained in that. And so, and I also kind of knew just in college, if I was going to play basketball in college, it's a time commitment. You know, they really own you when you're in sports in college. And also music is a huge time commitment. So I made the decision going into my junior year to basically quit basketball and just focus fully on music. And and that was actually kind of a little bit of a traumatic experience because, you know, I was the first one in my family to go to college. And so I think my parents were hoping I was going to get a basketball scholarship. And so the music thing was a little, you know, like, we're not sure how this is going to work. And so I had high school counselors calling me in to their office saying, you know, you're burning your bridges. You should stick with basketball. You know, you're getting letters from these different colleges. And but I knew the Lord was really calling me to pursue music. And so I did. I just kind of went that direction, and I ended up going to a summer camp, a music camp, and met my teacher, Phil DeGreg, who is at Cincinnati. And so that was between my sophomore and junior year. And he said, you should come down and audition. And I did, and got in, and actually got a really good scholarship as well.
And you said that's where you met your wife as well, who was there studying music.
Yeah, she was a year behind me, and she was a violin major. And so we met there and got married a few years after that.
Which has been a blessing for us at Grace. It's been a twofer.
Yeah, oh man, yeah.
Because we got Dr. Brath, but we got Shannon as well, and she's fantastic.
She's always absolutely.
So then you've had an interesting, diverse interest in music, ethnomusicology.
Yeah.
Did I even say that correctly?
That's right.
Okay,
yeah.
So what is that, and why did you decide to study it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we were serving at Bethlehem Baptist Church in Minneapolis.
So John Piper.
John Piper's church. So I was one of the music worship leaders there, and at that time, this would be kind of in the early 2000s. That time frame. We were up in the Twin Cities for about 13 years. They were beginning to plant churches, and since then they have this network called the Treasuring Christ Together Network, and they've planted maybe close to 50 churches now, like across the country. But at that point, it was kind of in the Twin Cities, and they have a multi-campus approach, you know, for their church. So we really felt like we felt the Lord leading us to be a part of that church planting movement. So there was a church in Brooklyn Center, and a pastor, one of the associate pastors from Bethlehem, and we joined that team, and it was a specifically a multicultural kind of vision for that church plant, because Brooklyn Center has just all kinds of just diversity there. There's Hmong folks from Laos, and there's Nigerian families and families from Kenya, a lot of Somalians in the Twin Cities. You know, so there's just a great diversity there. So when I got to that church plant, I just discovered I don't have the tools to really musically, you know, lead this congregation in worship, and because part of being a worship pastor is really shepherding your church there with music. And so I went back to school and studied ethnomusicology, which is really just studying different cultures' music. And so you kind of get tools because music is a language, and so you get tools to kind of navigate and understand different cultures' musical language. You know, so that was very helpful, and it was a natural thing for me because I just enjoy all kinds of music anyway. So it was really nice for me to explore that more.
Tell me a little bit, you know, enjoying such a variety of music and then learning how to both play and help others experience a variety of music. What did that teach you about, the diversity of God's kingdom as it relates to music, which isn't something maybe we all think about as much? I mean, lots of conversations about diversity, even going on right now, but musically, what does that do for you in broadening your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just speaks to, I think to God's glory, and he, I think he's, God is someone that enjoys a diverse creation. If you just look around and we can, I think the other thing is we can learn so much from other cultures, and that I think that's the thing that I've been impacted by, is that God has just given me just a desire to learn and just kind of be a student of what other cultures value. So like I just one little example is like in Middle Eastern cultures, their octave, like we have 12 notes in our octave, and in a lot of those cultures they will have 15, 16 different pitches within that octave, and so they have notes in between our half steps. And so to us it sounds out of tune. Like if you hear maybe a singer from India, if you go to one of our local restaurants and they're playing some music and you hear some of the singing, it almost sounds like, wow, it almost kind of sounds out of tune, but they're actually singing pitches in between the half steps, and so it's actually very very hard to do. And
I can't even sing on the regular notes, much less get the half steps.
So it's and if you notice their instruments, a lot of them are fretless, like the oud, and so they get in between those half steps, and they're hearing those pitches, and so it's a completely different language. But yeah, it just makes me I'm so thankful that I think of it like taste buds. Like God gave us the ability to recognize thousands of different tastes. Food could have just been like, oh, you just need to eat this just to survive, and it maybe could have been tasteless. But God gave us taste buds to enjoy it, right? So I think of that with music. It's like He's given us all these different cultures and different musics, and kind of for enjoyment, And I just think that's so kind and of the Lord to do that.
That's really awesome. That's even helpful. My son is Ethiopian, and now that you say it, I think they have that same type of like half, because sometimes when I listen to the music, I'm like, oh, that sounds off. But I think it's just the same thing, like a lot of sort of runs and how they sing.
Rhythmically, it's, some of the music in like American culture, like even jazz is like a mixture of African music and European music. But rhythmically, cultures, their music is so advanced. But yeah, melodically, there's these different kinds of tones going on. But I'd love to just kind of enter into that and just like, all right, I want to expand my musical palette, So
let's. I want to come back specifically to jazz, because I know that's a genre that you are adept in, and have even began to mix what's jazz and worship look like, which is, I mean, kind of, that's really neat to even think about and experience. But I want to talk a little bit about Grace and the worship arts program here. Remind me when you came to Grace, and at that point, our worship arts program was more an idea than it was a reality. When did you come, and talk a little bit about the last few years?
Sure. Yeah, we came in 2016. So that summer was when I was hired. And so at the kind of the end of our time in the Twin Cities, those last three and a half years, I was teaching at Crown College. And, they actually initially they wanted me just to teach a world music class. So I'd finished up my ethnomusicology master's, and I knew somebody out there like, hey, we have a need for someone to teach world music. So I did that for a couple semesters, and then they had an opening in their worship arts program to be a professor there to lead it, and so it just felt like a right time to. And I've always been a part of, or just had this desire to disciple and raise up young men and women. Like even at the churches I've been at, I've always tried to kind of duplicate myself. And so I saw this as an opportunity to really intentionally, equip the next generation to lead worship. And had a high school friend that lives here that they, he knew that Grace was beginning this worship arts program, and he said, "Oh, you'd be perfect for this. You should, put your resume in." I said, "Oh no, we're fine. We're happy in the Twin Cities." And he gave Grace my name and information, and they reached out, and we had a conversation, and it felt like a really wonderful opportunity. I grew up in LaPorte, Indiana, and my folks are still there. And it just felt like a good time to come back, to northern Indiana, and also just to design this program kind of from the ground up. It was just a wonderful opportunity. So this is our 5th year, and it's been great. I feel like we've got a lot of things kind of foundationally laid, and now we're just trying to really develop and grow from there. So.
What would you say are some unique aspects of the program at Grace that might be different than other worship arts or music programs elsewhere?
So a lot of the church music or worship programs at other schools, and this was true at Crown, was they're kind of built on the music ed model. And so these schools have music education, and then they kind of fit in a couple classes, maybe like in, church history and some other things, and then they kind of call it church music or worship arts. And so our program was designed from the ground up to be for the church. And so it's kind of the big picture is there's practical music courses like music theory that students take 4 semesters of theory. They take private lessons, either voice, keys, guitar, or percussion. They're in an ensemble. So there's all those practical kind of music classes. But then there's the theology of worship classes, like biblical theology of worship arts and church history and those kinds of things. So the goal is to have students become like musical shepherds or pastoral musicians. The things that we do week after week in church really shape the people of God spiritually, and music is sung prayer. So we're literally putting prayers on people's lips, week after week, and it affects, the way that we view God, how we see Him. It affects how we respond to Him, and so that's part of that. And then this year we even expanded the music production side of things, especially with the pandemic and things happening. We saw a need, and this was kind of happening before this year, but we saw a need for that the music production and music technology part to be really robust. And so we've actually broken that out to a separate major. So you can just come and be a music production major, study in the studio here, learn about recording music, learn about live sound and video and lighting, and those things. So.
And for those who are wondering, where's this located on campus? We're in the William Mayle Seminary building. So the seminary is upstairs, and the worship arts program is downstairs. And this used to be the Encompass World Partners headquarters prior to that. And it's kind of this hidden gem on campus that, sometimes I think students get down here in year 3 or 4 and they're going, wait, what? I didn't know this was down here. So you have, talk about like your space what do you have down here in the Mayle Center? So
initially we, like the first summer I was here in 2016, we got a classroom together. It's like a music technology classroom. We have, different stations that have computers and recording software and digital keyboards. And we do like music theory class in there. It's kind of our main classroom where students get a lot of projects done. And then obviously some office space, but then we have a very large performance area. And
it's really cool. It's kind of like an underground coffee shop feel.
Yeah,
kind of
very
thing.
industrial.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of rehearsals down there. We have a weekly, we call it music lab, where students perform for one another and they get feedback from their instructors. Then we have really a world-class recording studio, so a very large control room with a Pro Tools system. It was designed by a gentleman named Gavin Haverstick, who's designed studios for like 21 Pilots and big name artists. And we got connected with him through Sweetwater, and so we've had a really cool connection with Sweetwater as well. And then we're actually looking to build about 1,200 square feet of practice space. And so we've got some money committed, and we're kind of looking to do that project here. We were really on the cusp of moving forward until the quarantine time, but I think we're going to try to re-engage with that probably 2021 early.
It's a really neat space. We're in the studio right now. I mean, you could, yesterday I was in here and you were teaching out in the main, I couldn't hear a sound.
Yeah.
Just really great space. And the fundraiser in me is thankful you mentioned the practice lab. So if anybody wants to ensure those get done sooner rather than later, let us know, because those are complex things, the way they have to be set up and put together.
Well, I think during this time where students are trying to socially distance, like right now we have some larger spaces where they can practice, but these smaller spaces, it'll be like 6 smaller rooms and then 4 kind of medium-sized rooms, but that'll actually kind of be nice to almost protect them as they're practicing, and they can socially distance and get their work done and that kind of thing. So I think it is kind of important going forward. If we're going to have students on campus, we need to have spaces where they feel safe and can do that well.
One of the other things that you are responsible for at Grace is the Festival of Music, which is, again, this it's a very Grace thing, this mix of like community and the worship arts program. And so talk a little bit about the Festival of Music, and then specifically highlight the Jazz Festival, and then we'll get into jazz a little bit here.
Okay, sure. So I inherited this festival of music, and what we've done is we've kind of made it over the whole year. We kind of stretch it out, and usually there's about 12 to 14 different events throughout the year. We include like student recitals in that, so there'll be some student recitals. We just did a faculty recital here last weekend, but there's always like a Southern gospel concert. We usually bring in a couple different contemporary Christian artists. We brought in Citizens this past fall, and we've had Josh Garrels and John Mark McMillan and Sarah Groves and just a lot of different people. So, and then we do a jazz festival in July, and that's kind of, I don't know, it's just near and dear to my heart, because I just enjoy that idea of improvising and that kind of music, and so usually that happens on a Saturday, and we have 4 or 5 different groups come in. Some local groups, but we usually have a kind of more of a national group that comes in. We're actually looking this year in July or 2021. Antonio Sanchez, who's a drummer, he is a drummer for Pat Metheny, and he has a group called Migration, and we're trying to, I think artists are feeling a little, they're hesitant to commit at this, obviously, for obvious reasons. So we're trying to work that out, and hopefully, Lord willing, if things kind of open up a little bit, and we can maybe get Antonio to come and play, so it would be great. We had John Patitucci last year. He's a world-class Grammy award-winning bass player, jazz bass player. He actually played with our students, and you mentioned earlier that this kind of this combining of sacred and music and jazz, and I'm just something that intrigues me, and so I enjoy kind of trying to bring those two worlds together. So
the Jazz Festival is amazing. The concert, 4th of July, bringing in the big band over the fireworks in Winona Lake, and just all really neat ways for us to engage our community and be hopefully salt and light to our community as well. So jazz, I'm interested. What is it about jazz? I mean, when did your jazz obsession, is that fair? Start, and why are you so attracted to that genre?
It started when I was really young, and I had an uncle who was a bass player and a vocalist, and he would, you remember, I don't know, you probably I guess we're close to the same age, but cassette tapes. So he would make some cassette, but these little mixtapes, if you will, of jazz and just instrumental things. I remember he was really into this French violinist Jean-Loup Ponty, and like some of more like jazz fusion, like the combining like jazz and rock and those things. But he would bring these tapes over and let me listen to them, and he would actually encourage me to even try to transcribe some of that music. So I would listen to it with my little Sony Walkman, and I would just sit down at the piano and just try to plunk out things that I heard, like chords or melodies, and then the next time he came to visit, I'd say, "Hey, Uncle Steve, look what I can do," and I can play this song. He's like, "Wow, that's cool," and so he would encourage me. But it's just something about that creative process of being like writing music and arranging music, and again that language of it's kind of like the difference between maybe just somebody reading a novel or a book and then actually writing their own story. And so for me, it's like one thing to read music and to play it, but to be able to create it, I've always been intrigued by that, just like that process. And
in jazz, sometimes you're creating beforehand, but you might be creating in the moment.
Yeah, you are. So there's, a lot of times there's a structure that you're kind of working within, just like, and it's a lot like conversation. So Drew, like we did not script out this interview, but we're talking around a certain theme, right? So in jazz, it's very similar. You kind of have a theme or a structure. A lot of times it's like the form of the song or a melody, but you don't necessarily know exactly how that's going to play out, just like our conversation. So it's very conversational, and I don't know, I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah.
It just
and you've taken an interest in how does jazz and worship, like how can you fuse those mutual interests of yours, which is also just a really interesting idea and thought, and have even written some music kind of in that vein, right?
I have, and there's actually some videos of the last Jazz Vesper service we did online. You can find those, and we were going to try to do one this fall, and it just with the kind of the craziness of everything happening, we just had to postpone it. We'll hopefully do it in the spring, but actually at the faculty recital here. So this, I don't know if people are aware of this, but this year is the 250th anniversary for Beethoven, his life, and it's also the 100th anniversary for Charlie Parker, who is a alto sax player. And so it's kind of a bummer that their anniversaries fell on this year, because I'm sure there was a lot of like tributes going to be planned for them with concerts. But I just got this idea, and I can play a little bit for you if you want to. But it's so I thought, what if Beethoven and Charlie Parker had a musical conversation, and what and then if I was kind of like the one that was sort of conducting that interview, what would that look like? And so I kind of, at the recital last week, I did a little tribute to both of them, and I can give you like a couple minutes of it.
Yeah, we want to. This is one of the cool things about being in your studio is we can plug in a piano and have you plunk away at a few things for us. So yes, play that. Get over there to that piano and get yourself set up. And so this is an original. Well, I guess it's a mashup of other people's work, but
this is kind of like Beethoven and Charlie Parker if they were to kind of have a conversation together.
Awesome.
So.
Wow, thank you. That was awesome. Wow, beautiful. And now tell us a little bit about how, like, do you just sit down at a piano and go for it, or do you utilize software and kind of do it in your mind? How do you go about the creative process of putting something like that together?
Yeah, it's a little different I think for everything like that, because we were doing it at more of an acoustic thing on a real piano. I sat down at the piano to really think through that, but with other pieces, especially if I'm going to be like writing or arranging for other instruments, I'll use software. Like I'll use Finale, which is like a music software. And what's nice about that is you can put all the music into the score and see it, and even have it played back, so you can kind of hear some of the things. And then I can print out those parts. And so it makes it really easy as opposed to just doing it all by hand.
That's awesome.
So yeah, but
what you've written some jazz mashup pieces as here, which what we just heard. What are some other genres of music that you've written for?
Yeah, something I've been really trying to dive into these last couple years, especially, is writing settings for the Psalms. And so one of the things even with my students is trying to encourage them to do that. So we'll take, we might just take a text right out of the Psalms and try to, almost like a scripture memory song, kind of try to do that. But there's a psalter, and what the psalter is somebody has taken the Psalms and kind of, it's not word for word, but they've turned it into more like a poetry, and it feels like kind of like a hymn.
Yeah.
But and so there's my favorite psalter is the Genevan Psalter that Calvin put together, after the Reformation, and it's just because it's so unique. There's so many different poetic kind of I'm losing the word here, but it's rhyme schemes and so like a lot of the psalters kind of fall into very typical common meter or long meter, but the Genevan Psalter, there's like 130 different kind of poetic rhyme schemes that they use. So it's very interesting the way. So it really forces you to like if you're going to put a melody to that, it really kind of pushes you in different ways.
And so have you put a melody to that one? Do you have it?
Yeah, I've got one I could do for you.
I would love to.
This is
okay.
Psalm 1.
Okay.
So this is sort of the front door into the Psalter, if you will. It's like it's a wisdom psalm. So it kind of feels like you'll hear things like almost sound like a Proverbs, but yeah. So this is Psalm 1.
Okay.
So this is the words are from the Genevan Psalter, but this is my melody and kind of musical treatment of it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Blessed is he who shuns the path of sin and spurns the counsel of unrighteous men, will not stand or sit among the scoffers. Their company to him no pleasure offers, but his delight is in God's holy law. Day and night he ponders it with awe. Whoever loves God's law with all his heart and will not from the way of truth depart is like a tree which planted by a river stays lush and green with leaves that will not wither, which in season yields abundant fruit. So he will thrive whatever his pursuit. Not so the wicked, for like chaff are they, mere chaff that gusts of winds will blow away. When judgment comes, they'll stand condemned and humbled, cast out from where the righteous are assembled. The Lord will guard the pathway of the just. The way of sinners leads to death and dust. The Lord will guard the pathway of the just. The way of sinners leads to death and dust.
Wow, praise the Lord. That is so cool. I love that. I love that. I mean, it's like it takes you straight to the throne and worship the Lord. And wow, thank you for using your gifts and talents. And where can people find more of this? If they're like, okay, this is really cool. We've got mashups here of famous musicians. We've got psalters. Where can people find out a little bit more about you and your music?
So I do have a website. So if you just go to like Wally Brath, it's all one word, WALLYBRATH.com. So wallybrath.com. I've got lots of videos, YouTube videos. Also, for musicians, if they want to find scores to some of this stuff, I put the music there. A lot of free stuff, there as well. But yeah, you can go there and check it out. And
thank you for sharing with us today. Thank you for how you've brought your skills and talents and have used them to bring glory to God and also to raise up a next generation of worship leaders. I thank you that God's brought you here.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Drew.
Well, and thank you all for listening today. As you've heard me say on this podcast, our music was written and produced by Dr. Wally Brath, Assistant Professor of Worship Arts at Grace College. And thanks also to our co-producers, Andrew Palladino and Rick Neer. If you could do us a huge favor and rate or comment on this podcast and share it with others, we would be so grateful. Until next time, live your best grace story today.